else like sidles around him, you know? Things like that can work because you do want to limit Kershaw's innings. You still, I guess, for some reason, the Dodgers like, yeah, Bueller, not ready yet. You know, David Price, how many are we going to get from him after missing all 2020? So that might work. I don't know. There are a lot of crazy ideas out there about it. We might see that from the Dodgers. But yeah, if I were a betting man, I do actually think that we'll see a significant amount of 6-man rotations. Not like half of the league, but we'll see. I would say like 5 of them actually sticking through the year.
Yeah, so that's the Dodgers, and because they have the talent to actually do the 6-man rotation. They have the talent to do a 7-man rotation, to be honest. But how about a team like the Rays? Now, Blake Snell, we all know, only had 5-inning starts. Even in the World Series when he was rolling, 5-inning starts. I don't think they're going to do a 6-man rotation. The Rays would do a bullpen games, if any. But what do we do with starting pitchers on the Rays? Are they just because of the fact that to get a pitching win, it's about pitching length, right? Your team has to be up and you have to have length. You can pitch phenomenal and have a shutout in the 5th inning. But, if you're not in there for the 7th when they score, you ain't getting the win. So are you going to be fading pitchers on the Rays? Are you picking them with a little bit more caution because their win total could be lower?
I don't know if that's necessarily the reason why. For example, when Charlie Morton was there, I had no hesitation. He was in 2019. They were like, yeah, go ahead, Charlie, do your thing. And he had a fantastic season.
But who are they doing that this year with?
Well, they're not. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's not necessarily that's the Rays. It's just that they don't have the guy that would fit that role, right? Like Glasnow, yeah, I am factoring the fact that they're not going to let him consistently go 6 innings. It's just not.
No, they're not going to.
Not what he's going to do. Ryan Yarbrough. I call him the fratty pirate because Yarbrough. He's probably not either. Even during his great 2019 stretch, Yarbrough was still pulled often in it, and it made me really upset about it. There's I know I'm forgetting a major name there, but there's Josh Fleming in there too. I'm not too thrilled about it. Like all of the arms that they have. We mentioned Chris Archer. Those aren't the kind of pitchers that would force their way into the 6th constantly, and because of that, I have to take into account that they are on the Rays.
All right back to you on this one, Nick. We hope that the season starts on time, but it is entirely possible that the season is delayed by a month, let's say. We're not going to spend too much time on this question because I'm going to be optimistic here and say it won't, but how would that affect how you would be drafting players right now if you knew that there's going to be a month delay?
That's a great question. A couple things. One, the injured guys get a value boost. So like Mike Soroka, not supposed to start on opening day right now, but hey, then if it is delayed, then he returns. That's a good thing. You could say that like Chris Sale, Severino Syndergaard, those the moment that you would swing for those guys should be. Yeah, there you go. They would jump up a little bit earlier. But it extends not just to the guys that are already injured. The ones that we generally have injury risks for are more enticing. Because when they do miss time, it's less time relative. I guess what I'm getting at is if you say Jameson Taillon, we only expect 150 innings from him. Well, if no one is pitching more than 170, then that's fantastic, right? That's those injury-prone guys. They become a little bit more interesting to me. I also would say in the top 20 or 30, my rankings. I emphasize those that I expect to not only go like 175, but also 200 or so. Like Lance Lynn. Oh man, I love Lance Lynn for this year. There's no way Tony La Russa is even asking Lynn to get out of the game before 100 pitches, and B, with Lance Lynn's not going to let him take the ball from him. So you're going to see so many innings from him, and that's incredibly valuable. But if we have fewer games than those that we expect to get the cutoff, like Brandon Woodruff, we're at 175 because the Brewers are apparently only going to do a slap like across the board. Here you go, 100 innings, like they're throwing a magnet on the fridge. Then Brandon Woodruff isn't going past 180. However, you bring it all down, Woodruff, Lynn, much more appetizing to take Woodruff instead of Lynn, right? That's kind of the major difference if it does shift. I really hope it doesn't, Ariel. I'm not going to throw that juju out there,
Yep.
Okay, not gonna happen.
Yeah, no, of course that is the right point, and of course, as we talk on the show, that auction prices are not a real thing, and they're all relative to each other. And of course, if you would have pitched a smaller number of innings relative to somebody else, if you're gonna be at the same threshold, but everyone else is down because there's fewer innings, there's a month less, then you're relatively going up. Ruvain, did we miss anybody? Maybe somebody who's injured, could be hitters or anybody. It's not just a pitcher question here, really.
Well, for I'm going to continue with the pitchers, not just the pitchers who are coming off injury like the ones you mentioned already, but also David Price, Marcus Stroman, the pitchers who didn't pitch at all last year. They may take a little bit longer to get going, and the managers may have a very quicker hook earlier on. But if they're able to build up their stamina earlier on in let's say inter-squad games, something like that, then you may be able to get more innings out of them. Another guy, Miles Mikolas, he's coming off of an injury. More time for him to rehab. Everyone has to remember last year in March, everyone on the Phillies said that Andrew McCutchen wasn't going to start on time. He was going to be a month late. The season was delayed. He didn't miss any time. So people who drafted him early, they had no problem getting him, and they got him, and they got all they needed out of him. So a lot of these players who are going to be available in May, in June, back to their quote-unquote full load, then you're going to get the most out of them.
Yeah. You know what the interesting thing is, and this is the actuary in me talking, but, when you generally draft injured players or injury risk players, when you're making the assumption on a team that injury risk is not correlated, right? What does somebody who's pitching on the Brewers have to do with an injury on the Dodgers who's hitting? Like, you wouldn't think that injury is correlated. But if you think about it, it is correlated here because the time, right? If we're missing a month and it's delayed, injury players get more injured time back. So when you're drafting a very risky team because of injury, it's actually an increased risk. You're not diversifying because you have different players. Risk could be all together, right? The same macro influence on injury, which is time for recovery, appears both for anybody in the whole sport. Doesn't matter what your injury is from. So it's just a very interesting actuarial thing I've noticed about this. But back to the pitching here. So you mentioned that what the Brewers are doing, and they're going to add, or at least they say they just whatever you had last year, add 100. Is this a Brewers thing only? Are other teams going to do that? And just in general, Nick, how can people who have only had 50, 60 innings last year, how can they actually physically ramp up to 180, 190? You talked about, you want your youngsters, getting more volume because when the team is ready, you want them to be able to go a lot. How are people really gonna ramp up that much, other than the old Lance Lynn veterans and Bauer who wants to pitch 400 innings this year? How's that gonna work?
Yeah, so you might remember I mentioned before that the hardest thing to do this year is to project volume because we just don't know. I would say, for me personally, I'm making an assumption that any pitcher who has already showcased volume in their past, for example, Lucas Giolito throwing 175 innings or so for 2 years already, is going to be able to do that again. Look, we just don't know how much they actually pitched. Yes, we have this number of major league innings. How much do they pitch in the alternate sites? How much do they pitch in the winter leagues now? Because teams are like, hey, we still need to get more volume from you. Hey, how many of them were still going hard in May and June in preparation for the 2020 season? We really just don't know. And if I'm going to do anything harsh, it's more so for the young guys that really have not done much of anything in the majors thus far. Those are really the only ones I'm treating harshly. But someone even like Zach Gallen, who is young, but he threw 170 innings in minor league ball and the majors in 2019. I don't really see a problem having him go more than 160 for 2021. And that could be completely wrong. But this is all we have to base on this. And
right.
I'm hoping I'm not wrong.
Right. All right. So there's definite correlation, you think, between past innings ramp up and what's going to be. And obviously we'll find that out soon enough.
Well, so basically, let me add something and add another idea here. When pitchers come back from injury, like I'm going to give an example, a pitcher we're going to talk about later, Andrew Heaney. In 2017, he only threw 21 innings, but in 2018, he threw 180 innings. So it is doable to jump from that low number to high, but I think it's going to vary from organization to organization.
Yeah, and the question I want to ask, I'll throw in an additional thing there. Take a guy like David Price, who didn't pitch at all last year. Maybe Price is not the best example because he's an older guy, but in general, one of the opt-outs. Like, can a guy who opted out just come back straight from there?
I mean, you have Kopech who opted out, but it's not like Kopech wasn't pitching until he opted out. And when he opted out, it's not like he's just playing video games all day. These guys recognize that, oh, right, I need to be in the best shape of my life or ready to go for 2021. So I'm not treating it too harshly.
Okay.
I have to think these guys recognize it, that they need to be prepared. And there's going to be a lot expected from them. They're going to do what they need to do to be prepared for it.
Right. All right, just last general, any other comments about what might be different for 2021, not in terms of the pitching landscape, but in terms of our thought process compared to a regular year?
Yep, I'm going to be a lot more wrong than before. That's all I got there. Just so be prepared for that, and I can't wait to experiencing it with all of you.
Yeah. I mean, as far as projections will go, of course, the accuracy of projections this year will be worse than in most years.
What are we supposed to do, Ariel?
That's
so
what
crazy.
It is. But you have the same problem as everybody else. So
right. So let's just have fun and embrace it. And
then after the draft, when people are starting to get pick people up on Fab, people used all their money very early last year. Everyone has to get back to spreading their money out, otherwise they're going to have nothing left.
Yeah, but listen, it's an opportunity. Anytime there's something different, it's an opportunity for the people who are smart and who have a good sense of what to do to gain. Right, the less you have steady. Now you think, and those who can think well will do more, and that's why we have this show, to give everyone here nuggets of information that you really can't get anywhere else in terms of your thought process, more than just the players, your thought process. We're going to talk now about the starting pitcher playing pool. We talked with Paul Sporer the other week about some of the top of the pitching draft, so we're going to focus a little bit more on the bottom. But just before we get to that, Nick, do you have a general starting pitcher strategy in terms of drafting? Just for example, I know there's people who do the pocket aces strategy where I need two pitchers in the first 3 rounds. I can't live without it. Then some pitchers, don't need to do that, or some people are going full stars and scrubs, just pick pitchers in the middle. Like, do you have a specific strategy that you're doing this year or not, or you're just going for the value?
Sure, I love Toby. That is bat-flip crazy with the pocket aces. I recognize that I like to think that my strength is recognizing pitching. So I draft that way. That is, I don't go after pitching early because I'd rather spend on hitters so that I can adapt with pitching, work on my strength, right? But for this season, I've done a lot of mock drafts and talked to my staff about the ones that we did. We ran 4 of them through the offseason. And keep in mind, this is for 12 teamers. That's generally how I approach talking about fantasy baseball. My main strategy is 4 starting pitchers within the first 10 rounds that I trust, that I feel like I'm not going to drop any of them through the entire year. Those that are going to get me over 150 innings each, hopefully around 170 each. And having that foundation essentially says, okay, with the other half of my rotation, because generally you have about 8 starters or so. I sometimes get carried away and have like 10, but you have about 8 or so. You got to find the other 4 either in the back half of that draft or during the regular season, and have the recognition that, normally when I draft a 12-teamer, that is 23 rounds or so, look back at your previous drafts and figure out how many of them you actually kept for the season. I think you'll find that you kept maybe half of them through the full season. Recognize that these are guys that you could likely be dropping early on. So then you should be doing 2 things. 1, getting starting pitchers that have favorable schedules early, because you'll recognize like, oh, I'm on the fence about this guy. Oh, wait, he has 2 tough starts that I don't want to start him against early. Why would you be drafting that guy when you can get production out of someone like Zach Davies or Alec Mills, who both get the Pittsburgh Pirates twice to start the season. That sounds like something I would much rather do. And then I can throw back Alec Mills. There'll be someone else that I want to get after that. So if you have that approach of saying I have 4 that are anchoring my staff, it doesn't need to be DeGrom and Cole and Bieber. It can be like